Hello, BookTube. Well, you've got dodgy lighting, you've got an odd camera angle, and must be time for another library tour. we're carrying on with doing a library tour of my biographies. And I've been saying for the last few of these that I have a lot of British royal biographies. That is absolutely true, and you're learning it the hard way in these videos. Because this next, virtually the entire shelf is going to be British royalty or British near royalty. So there's nothing I can do about that. After this, the royalty almost completely stops. So, you don't have too much longer to suffer through. But this next shelf, we'll do the transverse books first. I took a glance at it before I made this video, and it is once again going to underscore the gaps. You might think, when you're looking at 30 biographies, that there aren't going to be many gaps, but there are conspicuous ones. One of them I noticed big time in the shelf that we're doing now. So the first transverse book is not royal. It's also not a full-size book. It's this pretty little thing. It's George Cavendish's famous first-hand life and death of Cardinal Wolsey. This is just a little hardcover edition. Really shouldn't be here. Really shouldn't be with the royal biographies. I must have put it here just for happenstance. It's a really interesting account of the great Cardinal and the great legate. And then the other transverse thing, is a royal biography. This is relatively new. This is Chris Skidmore's biography of Richard III, which is, I think, the only Richard III biography I have that appeared after his remains were found, after his skeleton was found in a car park. Not that makes any bit of a difference, but it did spark a few books, and this is the only one of those that I have. From Chris Skidmore, who is fairly young. I think I have reviewed every book that he's ever written. I'm pretty sure I have. Actually, I should leave the transverse books off, shouldn't I, so that I can get at the others. And the next one, the first normal book that we're going to get, is also new. It's this thing. It's The Shadow King by Lauren Johnson. This is her big biography of Henry VI, which I thought was great. Just fantastic. So in a rare instance, it was a rare instance where I did not have to hold on to the book and think, well, time and tide and all that sort of thing. Instead, I know I want it as my Henry VI biography, so I just made room and put it there. Oh goodness. Okay, all right. Now we're ready for a bombardment of Richards. we have Richard III. So this is with Skidmore's book. I now have two Richard III biographies, but only two. There've been hundreds, and I only have two. This is the English Monarch series of California, University of California Press. They all look like this. They're all very, very good. I have, I think, quite a few of them. Or rather, I've had quite a few of them. I don't know that I have any others at the moment. But we go straight from Richard III to Richard II. This is the Yale English Monarch series, famous Monarch biography series that I just love. And we go in the Yale for Richard III straight to Richard I. Those are all the Richards, and we're probably gonna have a lot of Yale on this shelf, because we move straight from there to Seymour Phillips' fantastic big biography of Edward II. What a book this is! Gigantic thing, just fantastic. Edward II is really interesting, and Phillips knows that a lot of the reasons that he's really interesting are not good. A lot of the reasons he's really interesting is because history and also drama has taken the easy way of writing about him, and so he does not. Another book that doesn't take the easy way and is much, much shorter is this one by Natalie Fried, The Tyranny and Fall of Edward II. A thinner thing from, this is from Cambridge University Press from 1979. Very, very good. I go back to both of those a lot when I'm needing. Okay, here we're gonna get a gap. A large gap, something I need to fix. This is Michael Jones's book, The Black Prince. We saw this last year. And this is a big, wonderful biography of the legendary son of King Edward III. King Edward III being the progenitor of all the rest of English royal history, and a great king in his own right. And yet, is there a biography of Edward III next to one of his son? Are there two? Are there three? Are there four? No, there's not one. I don't have one biography of Edward III. So we go from The Black Prince straight to Edward I. This is Mark Morris. We've seen him before. I had his book on King John. This is A Great and Terrible King, his biography of Edward I. And it's terrific. It's just terrific. It's solid and argumentative and opinionated and sometimes even eloquent. So I of course it had to go on the shelf. That's the fun thing about a biography section like this, is that I'm constantly making decisions about which new books belong on these shelves and which ones don't. Like, for instance, in the last 3 years there have been 2 biographies of Edward VII, and I haven't been even momentarily, even briefly tempted to put either one of them on these shelves. But someday that will change. Someday that, there'll be a new book and that will change. And that's true of anybody, not just British royalty, but anybody. Like, for instance, a couple of years ago, there was a big biography of Charlemagne that I liked. I liked it fine, but even while, it was clearly meant to be exhaustive and definitive, and even while I was reading it, I was thinking, well, there's something missing here. I can't quite put my finger on what it is. And there's a new big biography of Charlemagne coming out, and maybe that's the book. That earlier Charlemagne volume did not end up in this library. And that one might. The new one might. So I love that. I love that I constantly get to reassess that it's a real live bookshelf. I try to use all of my books. I really don't have the space or the inclination to have thousands of books around that I don't ever touch or consult or even see. I try to use them all, but some sections I use more than others. I use this biography section so much that I wish I had more bookcases for it, because I would expand it at the expense of other books in the place. I would just get rid of books to make room if I had the appropriate bookcases for this. Same thing is true in the little book room with my 2 bookcases of book reviews and book essays. I use that all the time. I'm standing in front of that bookcase all the time, consulting it, using it. And the same thing is true with the Penguin Classics. I use it, yes, for background and research and whatnot. When I've had friends tell me, why are you standing in front of that bookcase thumbing through those Penguin Classics when what you're looking for is online? You could just go to Wikipedia or Oxford University Press or whatever. It doesn't feel the same, and the reason why is the main reason why I am always consulting with that Penguin shelf, which is that it feels like visiting with old friends. It feels like it's restorative to me in a way that even the biography section here is not. But anyway, we go from Mark Morris's biography of Edward I to Michael Prestage's biography of Edward I for the Yale English Monarch series, which is much bigger and tremendously good. Just tremendous. I couldn't do without either one of them, so I had to have them both. Okay. All right. Now we have royalty of a kind. Royalty of a kind. This is Matthew Strickland's. Is Matthew Strickland young? I don't know. This is his biography of Henry the Young King. Henry II took the unbelievable step of having his oldest son and heir crowned king in his lifetime. And this is a full-length biography of young Henry, who in the movie and the stage play The Lion in Winter is referred to witheringly by his younger brother Richard III as that epic idiot, that monument to mock. But I thought this was tremendously good. I'm not sure that I disagree with Richard's characterization, but I thought it was really good. Oh, great. Okay. All right. This is another oft biographied subject. This is by far the best book. Although I wish I had this as a hardcover and not as a trade paperback. I don't really want this as a trade paperback. This is Marion Mead's biography of Eleanor of Aquitaine. A pretty thing, and also much better at using sources than, for instance, Eleanor of Aquitaine and the Four Kings, which is the other famous biography of her. I like this one much more. I don't even have a copy of the other one. But I have to remember to grab this in hardcover when I next see it, because a trade paperback won't really stand up to the use that I will make of it. And you know that if you're at Henry the Young King and Eleanor of Aquitaine, you know who's coming next. The king himself. This is W.L. Warren's gigantic definitive biography of Henry II. This is the book to have about Henry II. And I think it's a sign of that, how few soup to nuts Henry biographies there have been since here. This is going on 60 years. When did this come out? 1973. So that's a long time. And it's still easily the best book on Henry. A little bit dry in terms of reading. I think I mentioned that about Warren last time. That he can be a bit dry as an author, but and then we get a much plagued figure in English royal history, King Stephen. This is David Crouch's book, The Reign of King Stephen, with a Gustave Doré engraving on the cover there. This is also older anyway. This is from, also not as old as I thought, 2000. This is only 20 years old. Tremendously good. Just tremendously good. So exhaustively conversant with the sources that you really feel like you don't need anything else. And I found that to be true. I read and reviewed a later Stephen book that wasn't as good. It just wasn't as good. That's the thing about English royalty. Unlike some other biographical subjects, is that they're done. Their period is well studied. Their sources are well known. There's nothing new, aside from a very rare instance where somebody's skeleton is discovered, and that isn't anything. Not real. I mean, it's sensational, but it doesn't change the story. They're done. So if somebody in 1895 writes a great biography, a truly eloquent, piercing, insightful biography of Eleanor of Aquitaine or King Henry I or whatever, it's entirely possible that you simply having access to the next 70 years of ancillary research will not necessarily supplant that book. You have to do a better job as a writer. That's a lot to ask of writers, so often they don't do it. And we've got, oh good, okay, this is another brand new modern book. Just reviewed this. This is Catherine Hanley's biography of Matilda, who was a rival for the crown with King Stephen. And this is terrific. Matilda's had so many biographies, including one from a couple of decades ago, I think, that was really, really good. This one is also really, really good and a little more readable. So it's the only one I have. Okay. All right. This is also the Yale English Monarch series. This is Timothy Bolton's biography of Cnut the Great. Precious little to work with, but the author really does a good job. And that is the run of British monarchs on this shelf. And then we have these next three are oversized. They're sort of display type books. They were oversized editions from 50 years ago that were made to be heavily illustrated, and that were written by a non-expert. They were written by a novelist. Who's now forgotten and shouldn't be, because he's terrific. He's just terrific. The novelist's name is J.B. Priestley. Some of you maybe will know his name. And he did a series of books. This big one is on the Edwardians. There are all the typical hats of the era, and there's the man himself. He did one of these, and this is larger than a normal book and is full of color illustrations and black and white illustrations. It was meant to be sort of a picture book. He did, as far as I know, he only did these three. If he did more, I would love them, because I love these books. The next one is Victorian Heyday. It's very much the same thing. It's just a big, heavily illustrated, oversized book that takes you through the Victorian era soup to nuts. So you get a great potted biography of Queen Victoria herself. You get great looks at the movements of the time, scientific, social, religious. You get great thumbnail biographies of all the people who led those movements. This is just his Victorian book to go along with his Edwardian book. And then the third one is the Regency. It's the Prince of Pleasure and his Regency. All about, when King George III was locked up because he was not in his right mind, and this is just that. This is Priestley going through the era and just telling you about its excesses, about its characters, its law decisions, everything. And these three are so much fun. They are so much fun as books that I'm curious to know if he ever did any others, but I bet he didn't. These would have been closest to his heart. And wouldn't it be great? I think it would be great. I'm probably the only one. I think it would be great if Priestley's books came back into print. Not necessarily these three, but his novels, for instance. Maybe it'll happen someday. There'll be a revival. Who knows? If the literary world can try over and over again to revive Henry frickin' Green, it might get around to Priestley one of these fine days. But anyway, that is it. That is the next shelf of biography, and I want to give you a little advance here. Okay, yes, as I thought. Okay, so the next shelf of this library tour is still going to be all biography, but only one royal biography. Only one. That's all. And then we move on to the rest of the world. So you've made it through. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.